Hi, today is Thursday, September 4th, 2025. I am just sitting at a desk in this one is kind of a meeting room where we meet with customers, right, downstairs, so that they don't have to go through the security to meet us on the third floor where I work. So I usually just use our labor union's office in the morning to practice English by reading out loud English articles. But today someone was just lying on the couch sleeping, so I just avoided the place and came down to this meeting place, which is very seldomly used. So I hear some echo in this room because the walls are kind of, only one side is kind of soundproofed, while the rest three sides are just plaster, white plaster, plain walls, and not many furniture. Not much of furniture is just straight-sided, so that they don't absorb my voice vibrations, but instead reflect them back, so that I hear a lot of echoes. Today we are going to read this article that I saved yesterday. I have not read this article. I just saved it because my daughter is going to Australia on a working holiday visa, so that I am interested in Australian political landscape and how they react to immigrants, right? I wish my daughter becomes an Australian there. She's Korean, of course. I am Korean too. I visited Australia back in 2012. So that has been like more than 12 years so far. I wish to visit Australia several times. New Zealand, I visited the New Zealand once, and also explore New Zealand, right? So let's learn about the Australian immigration and asylum. This article is from theguardian.com. The Guardian magazine is the prestigious UK worldwide magazine, which doesn't have any footing in Korea. The title today is Anti-Immigration Protesters Say Australia's immigration is at record highs, but the figures tell a different story. I heard that Australia cannot increase the number of immigrants because of the water shortages, right? The vast majority of the Australian continent is desert, barren, desiccated lands, so that the water is always in short supply. I think they need to tap into the underground aquifers to increase the water supply, or build desalination plants throughout the continent. But those efforts have not been put in place so far. So they face constant water shortages. So they cannot hold more immigrants. That's what I heard. Latest net overseas migration figures are down 37% from recent peak, with experts pointing to misunderstanding of arrivals data. Get our breaking news email, free app, or daily news podcast. Oh, you have free app? Josh Butler, Monday, 1st September 2025. So today is September 4th, so 3 days old. BST. I think BST means British Standard Time or Brisbane Standard Time. I think British Standard. They usually say GMT, right? Greenwich Mean Time. But British Standard Time sounds more official, like a governmental order. Australia's immigration figures are not at record highs, migration experts say, rejecting claims aired at rallies on Sunday. Experts say confusion about various migration numbers and a recent case of inaccurate reporting, which spread like wildfire online, have combined to give a false impression of overseas arrivals. The government says Australia's net overseas migration figure is actually down 37% from a recent peak, countering claims aired by those behind the weekend's anti-immigration rallies. So they held anti-immigration rallies over the last weekend, right? Aired, right? Another good expression to learn is aired, right? Government says Australia's net overseas migration figure is actually down 37% from a recent peak, countering claims aired by those behind the weekend's anti-immigration rallies. Wow, that's a long sentence, but it's worth memorization. So let's memorize it, right? The government says Australia's overseas immigration figures are actually 37% down from its recent peak, countering claims aired by those behind the weekend's anti-immigration rallies. How many people are coming to Australia? There are several numbers relating to migration which are correctly or incorrectly bandied about. Permanent migration, net overseas migration, and overseas arrivals and departures, right? Overseas arrivals and departures, net overseas migration. I wonder what the net overseas migration is. Maybe Australians leaving Australia versus foreigners coming to Australia to settle, right? Abul Rizvi, a former deputy secretary in the immigration department, and Professor Alan Gamnon of the Australian National University, said the most relevant number when considering the impact on housing and infrastructure, water, right? Infrastructure. Some of the concerns raised by protesters was net overseas migration figure, or NOM, right? NOM. NOM is actually the vulgar word in Korea. NOM. Federal government figures show the NOM for the 12 months to 31st December 2024 was 341,000 people. That's down 37% compared to the NOM's peak of 538,000 in the 2022 to 23 year. Yeah, let's remember this format, right? The 2022 to 23 year. That record number covering the period when Labor took office in May 2022 came after the former coalition stomped on the immigration accelerator. After the closure of Australia's international borders during the COVID pandemic, Rizvi said, in a bid to make up shortfalls. That record number, covering the period when Labor took office in May 22, came after the former coalition stomped on the immigration accelerator. After the closure of like a step on it, right? Step on the gas, stomped on the immigration accelerator, After the closure of Australia's international borders during the COVID pandemic, Reeve said, in a bid to make up shortfalls. In a bid to make up shortfalls. That's a good expression. In a bid to make up for shortfalls. Make up shortfalls. Net migration is definitely falling, not rising, but it's not falling as fast as the Treasury is forecasting, and I don't think it will fall as far, Riz said. And I don't think it will fall as far, right? I don't think it will fall as far, Riz said. In a bid to make up shortfalls, right? Make up shortfalls. So you increase the production, you increase the number of immigration. Gamnon, director of the ANU's migration hub, agreed migration was currently not at a record level. The trend of migration is steeply downwards from recent highs, Gamnon said. Elon Musk shares post on X with incorrect attendance figures for Australia's anti-immigration protests. What were recent numbers? We are still waiting for accurate norm figures for more recent times. Rizvi said by mid-September, a more accurate picture would emerge. But while the latest figures are far from a record, other data from recent periods was much higher. Between mid-2016 and early 2020, the norm has hovered around 206,000 to 263,000 a year. But the COVID border closures say norm fall into negative territory for 4 straight quarters, with 95,000 more people leaving Australia than arriving in the year to March 2021. That's another good expression. In a year, right? In a year to March 2021. In a year to March 2021. Wow. But the COVID border closures saw norm fall into negative territory for 4 straight quarters, right? For a year, with 95,000 more people leaving Australia than arriving in the year to March 2021. The norm fall into, that's a good expression, right? But the COVID border closures saw norm fall into negative territory for 4 straight quarters, with 95,000 more people leaving Australia than arriving, right? Than arriving in the year to March 2021. After COVID restrictions eased in 2021 and 2022, the norm soared. It hit 342,000 in the year to September 2022, then 433,000 in the year to December 2022. That's good expression. In the year to December 2022, in the year to September 2022. We know the trend is sharply downwards from the peak. Gamnon said, we had a surge of arrivals after the pandemic to catch up when migration went in negative territory, right? Fall into negative territory, went in negative territory. But the arrivals catch up wasn't big enough to make up for the shortfall. Arrivals catch up. We had a surge of arrivals after the pandemic to catch up when migration went in negative territory. But the arrivals catch up wasn't big enough to make up for the shortfall. Those are good expressions. We had a surge of arrivals after the pandemic to catch up when migration went in the negative territory. But the arrivals catch up wasn't big enough to make up for the shortfalls. What did anti-immigration rally organizers say? Information distributed by rally organizers said the march sought an end to mass immigration. Some material included claims that Australia was at a record high of immigration. Such claims were supported by One Nation's Pauline Hanson, who claimed on Monday that the major parties keep ramping up immigration, right? Ramping up immigrations. One claim which spread online was that Australia was bringing in 1,500 new overseas arrivals each day. Wow, that's a lot. That claim was advanced by some conservative media outlets and picked up traction online among some supporters of the rally. It picked up traction, right? Picked up traction online among some supporters of the rally. Picked up traction online. But Rizvi Faruqi on March for Australia. Racism has been legitimized by media and politicians. But Rizvi and Gamnon said the number was inaccurate and a misunderstanding of migration figures. That figure, they said, referred to overseas arrivals and departures, OAD data, which is more about tourist arrivals than migrants. That figure, they said, referred to overseas arrivals and departures data. Okay, so the norm does not include the number of tourists that arrive and leave. Picked up traction online. Kimchi. Media and online commentary about the issue led the Australian Bureau of Statistics to last week issue a stern rebuke and fact check. Right? That's another good expression. To last week issue a stern rebuke and fact check. Stern rebuke and fact check, saying the use of OAD data does not what? Reflect the official ABS definition of migration, and many lead to inaccurate conclusions on migration. OAD data is a count of border crossings rather than migration. Yeah, it's a border crossings, right? Border crossings. A count of border crossings. A count of border crossings. It is best used to understand patterns in traveler movements, such as tourism trends and seasonal travel. The ABS said seasonal travel. The Bureau noted that someone on a temporary visa who traveled in and out of Australia multiple times would count as a visitor several times even though they only migrated here once. Rizvi said the use of that number by migration critics was nonsense. Right? Was nonsense. A count of border crossings. Are there other concerns about migration stern they issued last week? Last week issue a stern rebuke and fact check. Migration was a key point of contention in the May election. Peter Dutton's coalition pledged deep cuts to permanent migration. Another separate figure, right? Permanent migration, and to cut the norm by 100,000 below Labor's figures. Labor Party, right? Labor has said it wants to bring the norm back below pre-pandemic levels, but its norm for this year, usually contained in the federal budget, was not delivered with a March budget so close to the May election. The number is expected soon, government sources say, but Rizvi said the government would probably struggle to meet its own promise and projections. He said the only way to cut migration by a large enough amount would be to slash visas for partners of Australian residents, visas for overseas workers, or both. Options he expected would be unpalatable to the government on either a policy or a political level. There's no easy way out. They are all bad options, Rizvi said. There's no easy way out, right? It's quite a cliche. There's no easy way out. There's no easy way out. There's no easy way out. What has the government said? In Parliament on Monday, the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, noted the decrease of 37% in the norm. He was responding to a question from MP Bob Katter, who spoke at the Townsville anti-immigration rally on Sunday. Katter claimed 400,000 people were coming from overseas each year. Albanese rejected Katter's claims, responding, "I am not sure what the basis of them are. People in this country voted for a government that would understand that modern Australia was a different nation than it was under the White Australia policy some time ago," right? White Australia. Yeah, in old days, the Asians, blacks, or people of color like Indians, they were banned, or Pakistanis, they were banned visiting Australia or live in Australia, right? So it is called White Australia. I understand they want to be with themselves. Perfect. But they opened up the border now, so I can emigrate to Australia, which I don't mind because I have to retire in 3 years' time, and I could seek better happiness, a better job opportunity down under. Albanese people Albanese added that diversity is a strength in modern Australia, saying migration presents an incredible economic opportunity due to the diaspora here and their connections with every country on the planet. Yeah, it makes sense. What effect does migration have on housing infrastructure and economy? Gamden said migrants were not to blame for Australia's housing concerns. In fact, he said it could be the opposite. Really? House prices started booming in the middle of the pandemic, the end of 2020, when net migration was at its lowest level in 100 years, he said. It's simply invalid to say this housing price boom was caused by net migration. Research shows the relationship between migration and housing is small and weak. Gamden said migration may actually contribute to demand and supply, noting migrant workers were brought to Australia in construction trades. Some of them come in and build houses, and some are house builders. It even said migration is a small piece of the housing puzzle. Other issues with the housing are to do with the problem, right? This one. It evens out. It evens out. It evens out. There's no way out. It evens out. Migration is a small piece of the housing puzzle. It evens out. Migration is probably the better expression is it evens out. Migration is only a small piece of the housing puzzle. Other issues with the housing are to do with the problem. Some of them come in and build houses, and some are house builders. Right, I heard that there are several Korean construction companies in Australia. Cutting migration numbers would also have an impact on foreigners coming to Australia on working holiday or student visas, who contribute to Australia's economy, particularly the international education sector and businesses already struggling to find workers in a tight labor market. Wow, I should go to Australia and make money, like building houses. Interesting. It evens out. The migration is only the small piece, is a small piece of the housing puzzle, right? Housing puzzle. Any support you give us today will benefit our annual climate appeal. As denialist politicians join with the fossil fuel companies to dismantle climate progress, journalism is a critical line of defense for our planet. Please help fund this vital work. 18,772 of 40,000 readers. Wow, that's a lot. They are fighting dirty, we are fighting back. Across the planet, decades of progress towards a healthier planet is being threatened by a global resistance in the form of far-right politicians and governments, fossil fuel influence, and corporations empowered by the political winds to roll back their green pledges. Okay, so this is a different story. So interesting, right? We learned that NOM is different from OAD, and arrivals, departures, border crossings, they are all plural. It evens out migration. is a small piece of the housing puzzle. House builders. It evens out. What else I remembered? When in negative territory, they saw the migration fall into a negative territory. The migration is actually 37% down from its recent peak. They last week issued a stern rebuke and fact check. Rizvi, right? Rizvi, the Secretary of Immigration, maybe. And what else? Well, I cannot recall everything, so let's go back and see what I stored to remember. There's no easy way out. There's no easy way out. Picked up traction online. Picked up traction online. Picked up traction online. Picked up traction online. But the COVID border closures saw Nome fall into negative territory for 4 consecutive quarters, with 95,000 more people leaving Australia than arriving in the year to March 2021. We had a surge of arrivals after the pandemic to catch up when migration went in negative territory. But arrivals catch up wasn't big enough to make up for the shortfall. But the COVID border closure saw Nome fall into in the 2022-23 year. That record number, that record number stormed on the immigration accelerator in a bid to make up shortfalls. I don't think it will fall as far. The government says Australia's net overseas migration figure is actually down 37% from a recent peak, countering claims aired by those behind the weekend's anti-immigration rallies. Countering claims aired by those behind the weekend's anti-migration rallies. Countering claims aired by those behind the weekend's anti-migration rallies. Well, that's it. Thanks for listening and have a great Thursday. Right? Tomorrow I only get to work until 2 p.m. Then I travel back down to Gwangju, where my family is, my wife and 2 daughters. Right? I will go and meet a lot of people, eat nice foods and relax, and maybe till some lands next to Cafe Silk Road. If you are in Gwangju area or Jeolla Province or Hwasun County, you can check out Cafe Silk Road, which is beautiful, right? Beautiful, tremendously beautiful. Nobody knows better than about the Cafe Silk Road. I am the authority. You will have a prestigious experience by having lunch there. Lunch is buffet, right? Buffet is a new norm. Everybody should eat some buffet food, right? I'm a Korean Trump. Thanks for listening. Have a great, wonderful, tremendous Thursday.